Hey, Eugene Mulero here with Capital Agenda, and joining me is Kelly Madrick, transportation reporter at CQ Roll Call. And Kelly, the week ahead on transportation on Capitol Hill, it looks like we'll be focusing on what the Senate Commerce Committee is up to on Wednesday. The acting administrator for the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, Scott Darling, is going up for his nomination hearing. And then we have the agency on Friday announcing a proposal for a safety fitness determination rule. And tell us a little bit more about what we can expect from Darling.
So big nomination hearing on Wednesday. This is going to be a really important moment for the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration because their announcement of this proposed rule on Friday is going to kind of combine a lot of efforts that they've had over the past few years to create this new set of safety standards for determining whether truck or bus companies are fit to operate.
Yeah.
And this final rulemaking, arguably one of the last parts of this big transition, is the safety fitness determination, which is now going to integrate some of these safety scores that have been very controversial, as you know, in Congress.
Yeah. And the last funding bill took down the scores of the compliance, safety, and accountability scores. And we had members of the Senate Commerce Committee, led Deb Fischer of Nebraska, Chairman Thune, and others critical of CSA, and then FMCSA acting administrator when he was before the panel last year.
And the FAST Act took those scores out of the public view. But in some way, this safety fitness determination rulemaking, which we're going to see more on Friday, is really going to show how those scores are going to be taking and making an effect on that determination rule. People at the agency have said that this safety fitness determination rule is really going to wrap together the entire program. But it's not clear, and I'm sure we'll hear something on Wednesday about whether or not that determination is going to make those scores more legitimate, or now that they've been kind of questioned by Congress, whether congressional action to take those scores out and kind of reevaluate them is going to maybe weaken this effort. It's not clear at this point what's going to happen.
Yeah, and also it's worth looking at what else will come up, because FMCSA has a very aggressive and ambitious agenda for 2016 and proposed rules that will impact the freight and trucking industry. And I'd be interested to see on the safety side of the coin. I know we're talking about safety writ large, but just on the issue of driver fatigue, especially since the NTSB brought this up last week as one of their top concerns and to-do list for lawmakers to look at.
And I think because Congress has kind of barred the implementation of that driver fitness hours of service rule, that will also be something that the acting administrator is going to have to address in that Wednesday hearing. So I think that even though it's just a nomination hearing, we're going to get a lot of agency news out of that hearing on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think so. And if anybody's keeping score, FMCSA is also the last sub-agency at DOT to get their major sub-agency to get their nomination hearing. They were all acting on acting capacities, but we saw the confirmations of FRA and the Highway Administration. And then, Kelly, also this week we have Secretary Fox. He's going to be at the U.S. Conference of Mayors on Thursday. And, we know that Secretary Fox was the mayor of Charlotte, and he's always talking about the experience as a mayor of a big city and how that's helped him fulfill his job. But it seems like after the FAST Act in 2016, he's had some sort of a big picture view of transportation.
We saw this last week at the Transportation Research Board's annual meeting. Secretary Fox gave an address where he talked about inequality in transportation, and he kind of laid out a policy wish list, I guess, or he laid out kind of what he would like local agencies to work on when it comes to transportation planning. And he really wanted to emphasize the fact that planners need to focus on all different types of uses for transportation infrastructure. So whereas previously there might have been more of a focus on just roads or highways, he wants to make sure that there's pedestrian accessibility, for example. And he also gave us a little bit of a personal picture of how he grew up and his relationship with transportation infrastructure.
Yeah.
He talked about, when he was a young child, he grew up with freeways on both sides of his house and big
Exactly.
fences kind of blocking that off. And it was a really kind of fascinating and also very personal take on how lack of access to transportation affected his life. And so I think as the administration is kind of preparing to hand off the torch, they're taking on these kind of broader, more conceptual topics of transportation equality and other types of planning initiatives like that. But as for what that actually means on Capitol Hill in Washington, I don't think that it's going to be a major policy shakeup. But I think that we're definitely getting to the stage where it's kind of more reflective at the agency level. Wouldn't you say?
No, I agree. And then also when he addresses the mayors on Thursday, he's going to be equipped with the American Society of Civil Engineers report card of the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., where the engineers gave the city a C+ grade.
I think it was a
C-.
C-.
Yeah. Almost a D. And,
better than the national average.
That's right, of a D+.
Yeah, D+, yep.
And, but I was surprised, I read the report card and I was surprised that Bridges got the grade they did. I think it was a B- or a B. Because we know the Memorial Bridge, makes news all the time because it's, quote, crumbling. I know they're trying to fix it, or they are fixing it, but then the roads are in really bad shape in DC.
So roads scored one of the worst scores in the D range, but the bridges that connect them scored much better. Part of the reason that there was this discrepancy between what, a bridge or a road, cars driving over it, so you would wonder why the scores would be so different. But the American Society of Civil Engineers said that the DC's work to kind of shave down those deficient bridges, they pointed to, just like they've gone through a lot of those deficient bridges in the past 3 years, so they gave them a little bit of credit for that part. But on the roads part, it was not as good. The other part that failed pretty miserably was the levees. Didn't receive a failing grade, but got another score in the D range. I believe it was the lowest score of all the 11 categories. And the interesting thing about DC's report card is a lot of the infrastructure is solely the responsibility of the federal government.
Exactly.
And so, it's really a reflection of congressional priorities in an interesting way.
And I can see Fox bringing that up, on Thursday. And I also thought the report card was it reaffirmed the concerns that Senator Jeanne Shaheen, when she was on the floor, I believe last year, she said that the roads were of third world quality, and also the metro system got poor grades, and that's something that Congressman Pete DeFazio of Oregon, he's a TNI ranking member, that when he talks about metro, he says the metro is literally killing people, and he's referring to last year's accident where somebody died.
And I think that DC is an interesting kind of test case for how infrastructure is functioning across the country, because here we really have congressional priorities in focus. And what the takeaway from that report is that there clearly isn't enough focus when there's going to be massive growth coming into the region, increased traffic. The traffic on the roads is only going to get worse. The traffic on the metro is only going to get worse unless there's a major kind of policy shift and a shift in the way that state and local and federal leaders are looking at this.
And then the aging infrastructure in the DC area contributes to the gridlock, and the gridlock impacts the freight delivery and the trucking delivery of goods and services.
Absolutely.
Kelly, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Check out ttnews.com for the latest information on freight and trucking news. And for Capital Agenda, I'm Eugene Mulero.